At least 30 people have been killed in two separate mass shootings in American states, Texas and Ohio. Officials have not given a precise motive for the attacks, but it is believed that the Texas incident could have been a hate crime. The Texas shooter was arrested while the Ohio gunman was shot dead. Let's speak to Daily Maverick Associate Editor Brooks Spector, who has an in-depth knowledge of international relations and U.S. politics. Good to have you with us this morning.
Good morning.
I mean, truly horrific weekend, and those numbers just keep stacking up, don't they?
Well, we were driving back from the countryside, and then news comes through that this is happening, and I'm in a car with other people from South Africa, and they say, "Why does this happen?" And you catch your breath, and you say, "It's hard to say." I mean, there seemed to be a whole combination of things. I mean, one, of course, is that there are people who hate, and they hate either on ethnic or racial or political grounds. There are other people who are just disturbed and find no other way to express their displeasure and disorder in their minds. But it's underlain by the gun culture in the country, which means that there are more weapons available than there are people in the country. And the prohibitions against various types of weapons are limited and weak. And it is not very hard to come up with a weapon, even if you have had mental defect of one.
You see, that's what I find extraordinary. I mean, where is the process in making sure that a person of sound mind and intentions, I don't know how you can establish that, where's that process?
Well, in many states, it's simply easier to get a lethal weapon than it is a driver's license. Now, you would think that it would work the other way, but it doesn't. But you have to layer onto that even further the kind of racialized rhetoric that's emanating from the White House. It doesn't help the circumstance.
No. That almost gives them the go-ahead, doesn't it? They go, well, if the president can be that racist, then, here we go.
And if you have the kind of personality that says, I need to take direct action, and direct action in this case is releasing the manifesto and then taking your rifle and going to shoot people in a Walmart, that's what you get. Various people in Congress are demanding that Congress as a whole come back from its summer recess, pass some kind of universal background check, pass other regulations. But Jane, it's not easily going to be achieved. There is part of the Constitution of the United States that provides an escape clause, in effect, that says the right to bear arms shall not be abridged. It was obviously it was designed to allow appropriate then and designed specifically for people to be able to join local militia to protect the country. Now, this has been interpreted and reinterpreted in a very different climate, very different time in history. And then you have to add further the influence of political actors such as the National Rifle Association, which have long held kind of a lock on political action against open and complete freedom to own firearms. And it is politicians who feel similarly inclined receive donations through or from or at the behest of the National Rifle Association. But many other politicians worry they will feel the wrath of the NRA if they don't hew that line. And so as a result, political action is largely stymied. Even something as simple as getting a solid, verifiable national background check, whether you have a criminal record, whether you have a history of mental disorder, whatever, even that has become almost impossible to get past at this point.
And I mean, after so many school children have been shot in their homes and at schools, places where they should be safe, they took to the streets. The president said, we'll make some changes, and I think he made, teeny changes about the sort of bit that you can add onto your gun.
The bump stock.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. But even that sort of mass action that we saw in the streets, the pain of these kids losing their friends, has done absolutely nothing.
And a lot of people on the far right edge of things tried to argue that those children, that incident was all conjured up.
Yes, it was fake, isn't it?
Actors.
I mean,
it shocks the mind if you have children, if you know children, if you have relatives, if you're not a solitary atom in the universe, you have to be concerned at this point. I mean, if you look at a map of the United States and there's a dot for each of these multiple person killings over the last, I think it's 10 years, it's an extraordinary picture. And what's to be done? Well, the political will to change law within the Constitution or to push for changes in the amendment that guarantees, theoretically, the right to bear arms with no limitations. Something will have to give, and I am beginning to be afraid that it will only come when someone who is so famous, so well known, is also caught up in one of these acts.
Yes, because these numbers, I mean, if that doesn't change anything, you wonder what will, and possibly you are right. I mean, it has to reach that point.
The numbers, the problem is that people even now will poo-poo away those numbers and say, oh, look, there are more people killed in an average weekend in the country from person-to-person violence for one reason or another, but that, of course, isn't the point. The point is that a person who doesn't have the mental capacity to distinguish between being angry about something in the political world and taking this kind of action, that kind of person is not restrained in some way from using lethal force to go right the wrongs that they perceive in their imagination, and that they are getting an enabling feeling from the political environment.
Yep.
And even, if you believe some people, from the media environment, computer games, the way these things are covered. If you're not right in the head, you begin to think of this as heroic act.
Well, I hope I won't ever have to talk to you about this sort of thing again, but I suspect I might. Brooks, thanks very much.
I would just soon not have to discuss this, but I'm afraid that someday we will be right here again doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.